Hey guys, it's Andy from the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. I'm back again on YouTube, and today I'm actually going to be going through my top 5 running backs for 2015. This is a big list here. It's July. Things are going to change. They've changed all offseason, but I want to run back my top 5. So let me start with number 5, and number 5 is a guy named Jamaal Charles. Now, Jamaal Charles, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Last season, he had a very good year, but he had a limited workload, and that was an issue. He had only 206 carries for 1,033 yards. He did have 9 touchdowns, and he did average 5 yards a carry. He is playing at the same level he's been playing at, which is an elite fantasy running back 1 level. The problem is Andy Reid in Kansas City. Can Jamaal Charles do what he needs to do for your fantasy team with limited carries or with a little bit of infrequency with the workload? The year before last, he was at that 5.0 mark again. He had 259 carries with 1,287 yards, and he had 12 touchdowns. I think he is an elite talent that will get the rock enough this year. He was banged up last year. And so I think with limited options there, you basically have Alex Smith, you have Jeremy Maclin, you have Travis Kelce, and you have Jamaal Charles. Charles is on the field all the time. I think we've seen Niall Davis enough to know he's not going to be anything more than a backup to Charles at this point. And so I think be confident, draft Jamaal Charles inside that top 5, especially in PPR leagues. He's going to get so much value around the goal line. He gets the rock. He gets the ball from Alex Smith in space, and he does incredible things. And until he shows us on the field that he can't keep doing those, this is a 5 yards a carry guy for the last 3 seasons. So Jamaal Charles is my number 5 overall running back for 2015, and I would draft him confidently. All right, the next guy on my list might surprise you a little bit because he's only in his 2nd season, but my number 4 running back in a standard league is Jeremy Hill. Yes, Jeremy Hill of the Cincinnati Bengals burst onto the scene last year and actually got more carries than even Jamaal Charles did. He got 222 carries, 9 touchdowns, over 1,100 yards, averaged 5.1 on the ground, and just burst onto the scene and really stole that first and second down job away from Gio Bernard, and I don't blame him. The way that offense functions, the way that they have built that offensive line and that defense, they want to rely on the running game. And so I have Jeremy Hill projected for upwards of 280 carries this season. And last year he averaged 5.1 on the ground. Now, he's not going to be involved in the passing game a lot, and that's going to hurt you in PPR leagues. But Jeremy Hill is a monster on the ground. He's the maybe the new Marshawn Lynch in terms of consistency. I think he's going to be used in that offense all year long. And he's going to bring you consistent performance week after week, especially around the goal line. He's going to be the guy getting the ball. So Jeremy Hill is my number 4 overall running back for 2015 as we look at the rankings here in July. So let's take a look at number 3, Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell was the number 1 overall back in a lot of leagues last year. He had 290 carries. He had 1,300-plus yards, 8 touchdowns. And more importantly for many people, he had 105 targets and over 80 catches through the air and was just a dynamic playmaker on that offense week in and week out. And when Big Ben and Todd Haley and that offense kind of figured things out, they just kept giving the ball to Le'Veon Bell, whether it was in the short passing game, whether that was between the tackles. And now you have a second-year guy in Martavis Bryant that's going to man the outside. You have Antonio Brown. You have an offense that should be just dynamic again this year. And so the big problem with Le'Veon Bell, and maybe why he's not number 2 and number 1 on most people's lists, including mine, is the suspension. He's coming into the season with a 3-game suspension, and that's a big chunk of your fantasy season. That doesn't take any talent away from him, but it does mean that if you draft Le'Veon Bell early, you're going to need a contingency plan. You're going to need somebody else that you can play during those first couple of weeks. First 3 weeks. And so you got to plan for that. But if you can survive those weeks and bring Le'Veon Bell into the fold, he's going to deliver nearly the same kind of value he did last year, barring injury. So expect a touchdown guy, expect a guy who catches passes, great in PPR, and gives you consistent performance week after week. Le'Veon Bell is my number 3 overall running back for 2015 as we look at the rankings here in July. All right, let's hit number 2. Number 2 on my list. Now, it's not often a guy with only 21 carries and 75 total yards ends up number 2 on my fantasy list. But it's not often the guy's name is Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson had a lot of drama go on last year and not a lot of performance on your fantasy football team. But he's Adrian Peterson. He's coming off a year in which he ran 279 times for 1,266 yards, and he put up 4.5 a carry. The year before that was his big 2,000-yard season. He is fresh, he is healthy, he is in shape, and he is coming into camp, and he's in a Norv Turner offense now. And what does that mean? Well, that means you're going to get AP, and you might get even a little bit more in the passing game. I wouldn't expect Jerick McKinnon to see the field other than every 3 or 4 series as the third down guy. And so what I'm saying is AP will be on the field 3 downs most of the season. He's been a double-digit touchdown guy in every single season that he's played, barring except for last year where he had the legal problems and wasn't on the field. We're talking 10, 12, 12, 12, 18, 10, 12. That's the touchdowns you can expect from him. Somebody asked me the other day, who's the most surefire? Who's the most guaranteed? AP is the most guaranteed in that top 5 picks. He's on a good offense. Teddy Bridgewater's there. They actually move the ball a little towards the end of the year. They have weapons. Mike Wallace is in the fold to take the top off the defense. I don't see any reason not to draft Adrian Peterson this year. He looks great. And so Adrian Peterson is my number 2 overall back in terms of running back in a standard league in 2015 here in July. All right, let's do it. Let's move on to number 1. Everybody wants to know who number 1 is. Is it Eddie Lacy? No, it is not Eddie Lacy for me. Lacy's actually my number 6, and so maybe you were expecting the countdown to end with Eddie Lacy, and it doesn't. So here's my surprise for you. It's Arian Foster. Yes, that Arian Foster of 2010, 11, and 12. No, we haven't gone back in time, although I feel like it sometimes when I talk about him. I think people overlook him, and they don't recognize the level of play that Arian Foster is bringing. Be sure to tune into our podcast because this week we're going to talk a lot about Arian Foster and why he's my number 1 guy for this season, for 2015. Well, what did he do last year? Last year, all he did was go out and put up 260 carries. He put up almost 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. Who else is there in Houston? There's nobody else. And a lot of people think that maybe Arian Foster's inconsistent. They deal with injury issues. Maybe they think he's on the downside of his career. But let me give you some numbers. In 2012, he was a 4.1 a carry guy. In 2013, he was a 4.5 a carry guy. Last year, he was a 4.8 a carry guy. That is not the kind of trend that you see in a running back that's on the downside of their career. He had 8 touchdowns last year. He only played in 13 games, and he put those numbers up. And so I have him going, it's very possible he misses a game or 2. He seems to have soft tissue issues. He seems to have hamstring, quad, those type of things happen to him. But if he stays healthy with the workload he's going to get, what that offense wants to do, the fact he does get involved in the passing game, the fact his career is his trajectory is upwards right now. He's 29, going to be 29. He's actually only 28 right now. And so I think what people need to recognize is that there's no one at all behind him to challenge him. He's a 3-down back, and I think he's going to get the ball a ton this year. And so he's my number 1. I think he has a potential for a huge touchdown season, and I just think he's being overlooked. I see him 7, 8, 9. I get him in almost every draft towards the turn in the first round. And for me, Arian Foster is where it's at this year. Yes, we'll take the time machine. We'll go back to 2012, 2011, 2010. We'll hop on to Arian Foster's back, and we're going to ride him to championships this season, okay? You can get him late in round 1. You can get him early round 2 right now, which is insane to me. I have seen those come up a little bit here in July, but Arian Foster is my number 1 overall running back for 2015 in standard leagues. So to run it back for you, Jamaal Charles at number 5, Jeremy Hill at number 4, Le'Veon Bell at number 3. We've got Adrian Peterson at number 2, and then I have Arian Foster at number 1. So hopefully that helps you. Obviously, these are fluid. You can always go and view the rankings for the guys on the show, myself, Jason, Mike. You can go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. We've got our podcast. You can listen to it on there. Subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, on TuneIn. We're pretty much everywhere. Follow us on Twitter at the FFBallers. If you have a question of your own, you can go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Click the Submit a Question button in the upper right-hand corner. It's easy. We try to answer as many questions as we can. That's why we come on YouTube. That's why we answer on Twitter. That's why we answer via email and all those things. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Check us out. Really appreciate it. And that's our top 5 running backs for 2015.